All right, we're going.
What's up, guys? Jeff here with Godbold Exotics. I'm with Stephen Kush, and we're going to talk about scrub pythons. You guys know I love scrubs. Stephen loves scrubs, so we're going to pull out some scrub pythons, and he's going to educate us a little bit about them.
All right.
So let's start with Moluccans. Let's do that. Those are my favorite. My favorite python, hands down.
Starting from the top here, this girl is one of my prized possessions, my female Moluccan Scrub python. She is a little over 2 years old now, almost totally through her ontogenic color change.
Oh my goodness.
These guys start out as kind of like a dark reddish color as babies, kind of dull out, and then over the first couple of years, every single shed they just get more and more gold. Definitely one of the most brilliant python species in the world.
Now they're going to get pretty big, right?
Yeah, they're not. They don't get quite as big as the amethystina, or especially like the king horneye. But an adult female, 9-10 foot potentially. So they're a good sized snake, but nothing compared to some of the barnecks or southerns.
You have a smaller one in this tub over here, right?
I do. Yep. So I have.
Did I grab that one?
Yeah, one of my two males is in here. And this is a kind of a good example of the color change. So the female, the one I have, she looked very similar to him about a year ago. So no reason why he can't be just as brilliant as her. And if you look at them closely, he actually does have less pattern than she does on the back, so he might have a even more solid gold cast across the entire body.
I'm just blown away.
Yeah.
These are just absolutely stunning. Now these guys, when they're adults, they're going to get like thick. I mean, this is not an adult by any stretch. They're super rare in the U.S. Not too many people have them. There's just a handful. And most people that have them only have like a single animal, or they'll have a pair.
Right, yep. I can actually grab the third one. I got a reverse trio here. So 2.1.
You just hang out here. I'll be back in a sec. I'm kind of impressed with the demeanor. Like they're not worried about me at all.
Yeah,
they're not stressing out.
A lot of people, who keep scrub pythons, I almost feel like exaggerate a little bit, their attitude. The thing with them is they're very intelligent, they have a very strong feeding response, and they're very visually oriented, so they react very quickly to, quick motions in front of them. They definitely can kind of understand your feeling towards them, if you're nervous around them, they'll catch on to that. It's really just getting them past that initial feeding response, and then once you have them out, not restraining them, kind of just going with them, and then not making any real sudden movements around them, because that will really catch their attention. And they strike extremely accurately and really have some of the most impressive strike ranges of any snake in the entire world.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had some amethystina, and they could cover some distance pretty quick, and you wouldn't realize that they could strike that far.
Yeah, every now and then during feeding, one of these will jump out of the tub right as I open it, and kind of is a little bit of a check on my respect for these snakes, and I see really just what they're capable of from a dead stop.
And they've got some pretty impressive teeth too.
Oh yeah.
They are arboreal, so they're gonna climb. I mean, you can keep them in a terrestrial setup, but you put some big, thick perches in there, they'll use them. Yeah,
and these tub setups are temporary while they're growing up. I definitely plan on making them some very big arboreal setups when they're adults, because they display phenomenally. Having a couple big gold snakes sitting up in a tree, I don't know, to me nothing would be much cooler than that. Alright, so from Somalia classilepis to Somalia amethystina, here's one of my barneck scrub pythons, and this is the one that started the addiction for me. The first one I ever got him about 2.5 years ago as a little red neonate. The amethystina all start out as about solid red babies, where you can still see that bar neck on their head, obviously, which is where they get their namesake from, the bar-neck scrub python.
Trying to get his head shot in here.
Yeah.
No, you're fine.
So this one, I purchased it as a sarong locality type, and the sarong are well known for having very heavy black bands down the back. As this one grew up, kind of started to think that's not the case. This now more represents the Manokwari locality type, which if you look at it on the map is right next to sarong, but how we describe it in the hobby, you can see it has much more of a reduced kind of banding, whereas the bands are very similar color to the tan of the rest of the body. But either way, very beautiful snake. For me personally, I love the reduced pattern bar necks, so definitely not complaining. Another snake that has always had a very placid demeanor, never showed any defensiveness towards me. Does have a very strong feeding response though, so initially opening the enclosure, with any scrub python you really have to be wary of that, but they're very intelligent, and once they're aware that food isn't present, that kind of is off their mind. And this one is just about through its color change. Just about every time it sheds, it gets brighter and brighter, especially down by the tail. A lot more light pigment starting to come in, and then up top with the reduced pattern bands.
Awesome.
All right. This here is definitely my favorite snake I've ever owned. It's another one of the kind of Manokwari type bar-neck scrub pythons, and she is getting to adult size. She's probably somewhere between 8 and 9 feet. Just very, very tame animal, brilliant coloration. And another one that's always been very calm with me. Just what fascinates me about these scrub pythons, the variation, especially within Amethystina, but within the whole complex, across 5 species, you can get 30 to 40 different appearances, difference in color, pattern, the size differences, and then across the species, the Moluccans, the Tannenbars, Halmaheras, all have such different appearances. And to me, the arboreal snakes has always been an interest of mine, loving corallus and green trees, and then also, throwing a little bit of extra size with the scrub pythons, really.
Oh, they're impressive, no doubt.
Yeah, I've always loved this, and this snake has always been very comfortable with me. Often I'll be cleaning its enclosure and it'll be wrapped around my face, and it might be something that isn't recommended with most scrub pythons, but this is an animal I really trust. I've had for a long time, so I really feel quite a bond to this. This is almost like my Kilo, where Forrest's big croc monitor.
Right.
It's his most special animal. This is definitely my most special animal.
That's one thing I wanted to point out is, getting to know your animals can't be understated.
Mm-hmm.
It's something to where there are a lot of keepers out there that have a lot of different stuff, but you'd be surprised at how few of them probably really, really know the demeanor of their animals. Maybe they don't interact with them that much.
Yeah, for me, I have the scrub pythons because I love interacting with them. That's definitely one of the highlights every week is, going through, cleaning all of them and taking them out of their enclosures.
That's part of the fun of keeping them, but
yeah, exactly.
You kind of have to interact with them. There are species that, shouldn't be underestimated and could do damage if you're not careful. And so, if you're going to keep them, you really do need to know the little ticks of each individual animal.
Definitely, and I feel these definitely do build kind of a comfort level with you over time. Kind of more goes toward their intelligence.
Well, I mean, you can tell that just from the animals that we've seen in this video.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Especially I have 19 scrub pythons, so I really feel like I'm starting to kind of pick up on their general disposition and their mannerisms across the board. But every single animal is definitely an individual. They have their little ticks that upset them and different personality types. So it's one of the parts about it that I really love is just learning the different individuals. And this is her favorite thing to do. It happens about once every time I pull her out of the enclosure.
How funny.
Oh, man.
Well, this is the same thing I've been preaching with my Amazons, is they're not just aggressive, bitey animals, and not one of these animals has struck at you. And guys, I want you guys to know, even off camera, none of these animals have taken a swipe at either one of us.
Nope.
I mean, you saw people in the background walking around. I mean, they're not worried about what's going on. I'm sure they're aware of everything happening, but they're not overly nervous. It seems like they're just as comfortable with us as you are with them.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Yep.
So let's take a look at some others.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. So what are we looking at?
So now we are looking at a sarong locality type barneck scrub python. If you compare this one to the Maniquari type I just had out, you can see that black on its back is much more defined, much darker. And this isn't really the typical sarong look. Most sarong barnecks have much thicker bands that go all the way down the sides, where this one kind of stops short. So this would almost be like a reduced pattern sarong, but definitely is still a sarong because of how deep that banding is. And this is one that really had its color change take place early on in life. Obviously, like all the barnecks, it started out as a solid red baby. And I got it when it was only a few months old, and it already had completely changed out of that red coloration, which I found really interesting, and kind of theorized at first that this one might turn out to be super bright as an adult. And I really do think that's going to happen. Every time it sheds, it just gets brighter and brighter, especially down by the tail. You compare the tail color of that last one to this one. This one is much brighter, much more of that kind of light tan coloration. So I think without a doubt, in a few years, this thing's going to be a big, 9-10 foot adult, just be glowing yellow. And another one of the snakes where strong feeding response at first, but once it's out of its enclosure, no ill will. Kind of breaks the mold of what everyone thinks about with scrub pythons, that they're aggressive and bitey, which they can be, and you need to respect them. Once you understand them, they really aren't the monsters that they're made out to be.
Awesome.
A little behind the scenes of taking out the scrubs. So now we're on to Somalia tracei, the Halmahera scrub python. Obviously named after Tracy Barker, one of the greatest python breeders of all time.
They are a favorite of mine behind the Clastulepus.
Yeah, this is the species that I most recently acquired. After they were bred for the first time ever at Oklahoma City Zoo, produced last November. I really just, I knew I needed to get them, especially with, how volatile export out of Indonesia can be at times. I was starting to worry that I would never get my hands on the species, so jumped on the first ones I could find, and very, very happy I did. Within the first day, immediately was up there with some of my favorite snakes I have. This is basically an adult female. They can get bigger than this. There have been ones documented to reach 13 feet in length. She's about 8 foot or so, maybe a little bit bigger than that. Definitely breeder size. Conventional knowledge would say that this snake will never reproduce. Dave Barker in particular said that with this species, an adult female will never fully establish in captivity, and we'll see. That is what the track record says with most people who have tried breeding the adults. But this one has been doing very, very well for me, settling in very well, eating frozen thawed rats, so we'll see. I have some younger ones I'm raising up too, so I have an adult pair and 2 younger ones. So essentially my thought process here is try to breed the adults for as long as I can while the younger ones are raising up. And if I get no production in the meantime, at least I have some sort of knowledge of what I've done and what hasn't worked. So that once the little ones are up to size, I have a much better idea of breeding them. Because I do have a captive hatched female, not captive bred, but a captive hatched female from last year that I'm raising up. She is doing very well. So this is something I'm very passionate about, and I'm just super excited every day to come in here and work with this species.
Awesome. Let's see one of the smaller ones.
For sure.
Go for it.
So this is that captive hatched female. So over the last 6 months or so, there have been a good amount, and when I say good amount, maybe 5 captive hatch Halmahera scrubs that I've seen brought into the country. This is the first one that was brought in kind of late fall of last year that I was very lucky to get my hands on. So again,
Crazy how iridescent they are.
Yeah, it really is insane. It's always cool on these dark colored snakes to see that iridescence come through. But it really is, a big difference with the captive hatch ones. Definitely more bold than the adults because Halmahera scrub pythons, when comparing them to the Moluccans or the Barnacks or whatnot, are much more kind of secretive, a lot more timid. Generally, not as inclined to bite as those other species, even though in my experience none of them particularly are. But this species really won't, become very alert once you open their enclosure. They're much more prone to hiding, which a lot of people who have kept these have documented them thriving much better in like a dark, small tub setup as opposed to like a big display enclosure where seemingly they get stressed out and stop eating and really stop thriving. So it'll be interesting to see with the little captive hatch baby if that behavior will appear in this one because it's not wild caught, or if that is just how this species acts in general, which would be awesome if across the board there's a pretty drastic behavioral difference with one of the scrub python species. And now this is my male Halmahera scrub python. So obviously not quite as big as the female, but with most python species, the males don't have to be quite as big as the females to breed. From people I've talked to, he's definitely of reproductive size. So this coming year, I will be attempting to reproduce them. Definitely going to reach out to some people who have a lot more knowledge and experience than I do for some tips on how to kind of best set myself up for potential success with them. Obviously, my expectations are as close to zero as you can get because this is definitely the hardest python species in the world to breed. Only been done once ever, tried numerous times. So to be a private keeper to successfully breed Halmahera scrub pythons, that would be that's something I really want to try to strive towards because they are such an amazing species that I really want a lot more people to experience because they're amazing to keep. They're very unique, color and pattern wise, demeanor wise. They're just, I don't know, to me some of the coolest animals in the entire world.
I apologize in advance, but there's going to be a ton of your crotch on this video. Ladies, I'll put his contact info in the description.
I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right, so scrub pythons, they're awesome. We don't have any tannin bars, but they're little demons anyways, so that doesn't really bother me. But want to thank Steven for coming on and pulling out some of his personal animals and contact info.
Yep. Primary is Instagram at Steven Viridis. Viridis is in Morelli. Viridis, the Latin name for green tree python, and Steven Kush on Facebook.
Awesome. Take care. Make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching. You've been watching Godbold Exotics.